Live from the rooftop of the Hermann London Real Estate Group in beautiful downtown Maplewood, it's the St. Louis Realtor Podcast with your host, Adam Kruse.
Welcome everybody to the St. Louis Realtor Podcast, live today actually from La Mancha Coffee Shop in Old North St. Louis, right across from Crown Candy. I'm here with Shannon St. Pierre, my co-host.
Hello.
And we have two very special guests today. You may have heard of them, Zachary.smithey. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay, and Joseph Bandelos.
Correct.
And we are here to talk about container homes today. You guys are building this amazing looking 3-story, super interesting architectural container home here in Old North, right?
Yes.
And Zach, people may have heard of you because you're the guy who built the container home in St. Charles.
Yep. It caused quite a controversy, which I didn't think it would.
A little stir and a few more ordinances, I think, in place now.
Correct.
Okay, so let's kind of I just have a couple overview questions. So tell me, why container homes?
For me personally, when I was building my house, it was about saving money, so it was economic, but it was also about recycling, repurposing, and sustainable building.
Okay, so is it economic? I mean, buying these container homes they're fairly cheap to buy, I guess. And
yes, it can be economic. So for the design you get, it is usually cheaper than standard construction. But sometimes you see these really outrageous designs, and people are like, "Oh, well, that's not any cheaper than normal construction." But you're getting a very exotic design. So if you go with a more simple design, yes, it's much cheaper than standard construction. So it all depends on the design.
Are there tons of these shipping containers just available around the world and the country?
Oh yeah, there are approximately 34 million on the planet, and most of them are beyond their years, and they're continually being built.
So they build it, they use it for a while to ship whatever around the world. And then how do they decide when to stop using it?
I'm not sure if they have just a usage or a timeline or just the general construction.
They have a code requirement that they have to meet, which is seaworthiness, and it has to pass a specific test. If it doesn't pass that test, then it has to be brought up to standards, and if it's not brought up to standards, it's taken off the lot or taken out of circulation.
Okay, and then what do they do with them then?
They'll just be stored, and they'll have yards of them where they'll just sell them off and do either what we're doing or just sell them for different
Do they
storage
scrap them?
units. Yeah, they'll
melt
scrap
them down, reuse?
Not really that much, and there's just too many of them to be doing that. But they try to get more use out of them than just as scrap metal.
And as far as scrap metal, a container is built in such a way that you have to put more energy into cutting it down to scrap it than it's worth that you're going to get back out of it.
Okay.
So let me back up for a minute. Zach, you're the guy who originally thought of doing this locally, and what is your role in this home that we toured today?
So
here in Old North.
Yes, I spent a year and 2 weeks building mine from scratch and designing it because the bank wouldn't give me a loan. I decided I didn't want to spend another year building this one, so I was on the design and consulting side.
Okay. And Joseph, you're the general contractor.
Correct.
But you seem to know a lot about shipping containers. Is this your first shipping container project?
I've been involved with shipping containers in the past in commercial sides, as well as I have a partner. We have a design on particular shipping containers to make them collapsible. So I've had I work with them internationally as well. So I have a fair share of experience with shipping containers.
Wow. Okay. Well, so what was the process that you guys had to go through to get the approval to build this home? And part of the reason I asked that is because I think people that are seeing your photos online already are probably reaching out to you guys going, I want one, And I know I'm driving around seeing a vacant lot. I saw a post for a vacant lot in Maplewood today, and I'm going, we need a shipping container home there, right?
Yeah.
What's the process?
Every municipality is different. So every city, every neighborhood is different. Luckily, the city of St. Louis is very accommodating. They want progress. They want people to come in and do interesting things.
Is that by aldermen, or is that just the entire city of St. Louis? It's probably going to be approved.
Joe might know.
As far as the city, Ralph at the planning department has been very welcoming and very supportive with the project, and with us meeting the guidelines of the architect's approvals and plans, they've been very supportive with giving us what we needed to do to move forward.
I mean, I'm guessing that the approval has nothing to do with like the strengths or the structural integrity of it. These are strong buildings, right? It's
Correct.
more about aesthetics or what?
Negative. There's a lot of structure that goes involved that gets put in as well, because when you start stacking them, there's a lot of structural requirements that need to be met there with supports, and it's not where you just take it, because remember, wind still plays a part of all of this, where they can get either blown over, They hold, as far as structural strength, they hold a lot, but you still have to make sure that they're put together properly in order for them to have that strength.
And that goes back to the design that we were talking about, and design costs, construction costs based on design. In Travis's construction, we're cutting out almost all of the interior walls.
Now, is Travis the guy who you're building the home for?
Yes.
Okay.
And when you do that, most of the structural integrity of a container is in the walls. So then you have to put in I-beams and other posts to take that load.
Okay. So you guys had to get structural engineers involved and kind of planning all this stuff?
Yes.
Very much so, sure.
Luckily, his design, as far as the interior goes, is very similar to mine, so we already went through this process once.
Okay. So how many square feet is each container?
320 square feet.
Oh, wow. Okay. So someone could probably just use one and make it their house?
Yeah, that's on the larger side of a tiny home.
Uh-huh. Have you had people reaching out to you asking for that kind of thing yet, or?
Yes, and I haven't had time to go through all of those requests, but I have a list.
You do? Okay.
Would you have to build a foundation for even just a single container home?
If you zone it as a tiny home, it has to be on wheels. It has to be mobile.
Okay.
But if you want it on a lot, then you run into certain problems where a city wants it to be a minimum square feet, which would probably be 2 containers, 640 square feet, depending on what the city requirements for the minimum square footage is.
Do you know what the code is, Joe?
No, on the minimum requirements, I'm not sure what the code is on the minimum, but to answer your question as well, to make them permanent, you have to at least put them on a pad, so you don't have to have a foundation to each one, but as long as there's a pad,
A slab.
a slab, we can put them on a pad and join them that way.
It's so cool, like what you've done at this house, where there's 2 sitting next to each other, or there's 3 sitting next to each other, and then the next layer is back. So then you get this super cool, like VIP deck from the second layer, right? And then on the back of it, you get sort of a covered, and this guy's going to use it as a carport, you said.
Yes, yeah, it has a 13-foot cantilever. The center floor is pushed back 13 feet. The first and third floors are directly above each other.
Okay. Is there any idea how many of these you could stack on top of each other?
These can go, I believe, 10 high.
Wow.
Fully loaded with 60,000 pounds each when they're on a container ship. So when they're fully loaded, not even counting like as a house. So I'm not really sure. It depends on how much of the wall structure you cut out. But you can go at least 10 stories tall.
I mean, everyone goes now. What's that city? Abu Dhabi? Or
Dubai?
Dubai. Everyone goes to Dubai to see like the super interesting architecture. I think the next thing here is Joseph and Zach are going to build a 100-story tall shipping container building.
That would be interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you should just do that for engineering feet, just for fun.
Oh yeah, I'm into it. If anybody's out there who wants to pair up with us, let's get it done.
Yeah. By the way, I do want people to be able to reach out to you if you want them to.
Yes.
So do you want to give any sort of contact information for people listening?
Yes, you can send me an email at Zachary.smithey@gmail.com, and that's ZACHARY.smithey SMITHEY@gmail.com.
And mine is, for the construction side, is Joseph Bandalos. That's JBANDALOS @hotmail.com.
So it's jbandalos @hotmail.com.
Correct, jbandalos.
Okay, cool. Because I know people that are listening are going to want to reach out to you guys and hopefully some of them will do business with you. A lot of them will just have questions and want to record podcasts and stuff like that with you.
And another thing that I'm working on right now are very efficient designs using this type of construction so we can bring construction costs down for affordable housing in St. Louis, which I think there's a huge need for.
Okay, so let's talk about this one that we just toured, right?
Yes.
Did he buy the lot? Did I read that he bought the lot from the LRA?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's a pretty sweet lot.
It's a large lot, yeah.
It's a very large lot, but it's this corner lot that his deck, that second-story deck of his master suite, will now overlook the arch.
Yes.
So,
right down the end of the street,
yes,
you see
it's
Crown
amazing
Candy
street.
and the arch.
Yes, it's an amazing street, and then this arch at the very end. It's perfectly framed. I mean, it's cool.
We interviewed Laura from the LRA a few podcasts ago, and I guess people can reach out to her and get a lot from her. There's a lot of them available, right?
Yes.
Or they can go to the LRA website, too.
Okay. So let me, do you mind if I just run through a few more questions about the property, this particular house itself? What kind of foundation did you pour?
The foundation was a standard foundation. It was a crawl space, so it was a 3-foot high, 8-inch wall on top of a footing, standard footing. So it's pretty much. But what made it very unique and different is constructing it, and because Zach had built one previously, there was a lot of nuances, a lot of details that we were able to pay attention to that made it fall into place much easier than it would normally have without knowing these details, especially with setting it into notches, because the pads on containers, they are at different levels, and the pads meaning the feet when you're stacking them, they're at different heights, or the corners, the 4 corners, they're at different heights than the rails. So when you're stacking them, you have spaces and gaps in between these containers that really would not be expected, thinking that they're flush with the rest of the container, and they're not. So knowing these details and ahead of time, it made it much easier for us to put these in place in a single afternoon, which is what we did.
And we embedded steel plates into the foundation around the perimeter and where the feet land as well. So when we drop these metal containers, you have these embedded anchored plates that we weld the containers to. So they're welded down.
Yeah, I saw they were welding the container to that sort of, I guess you're calling it a plate, but how is the plate connected to the concrete foundation?
That's held with interior little eye clips, eye hooks inside the plates that are welded, which are on all the plates, which are on the angle iron plates as well as the base plates that sit underneath the feet themselves.
And is that drilled into the foundation?
It's actually, when it's poured, it's placed in the foundation as it's poured. It's placed in as it's poured, so that's where the details come in when pouring the foundation.
And
very,
is
very
that
critical.
kind of what helps with the windproofness?
Well, when you say windproofness, yeah, it actually helps with the weatherproofing total, because now the container is sitting directly on the plates that Zach was just mentioning, without any gaps or air leaks, and then it gets welded directly to the plate, eliminating all airspace.
Yeah, whereas a normal house is not anchored down to the foundation, it's basically sitting on it. So this can't get blown away. It's anchored down.
Right.
Okay, so I've been really interested in shipping container homes and things like that for a while. I have like a little piece of land down by Steelville, and I want to put a shipping container there to like secure my stuff, basically. And when I watch all these YouTube videos, one of the things I find is they all complain about how hard it is to cut the holes in the walls, and they're using 1,000 grinder wheels or whatever. Is there a better way? Have you guys found a better way to cut the holes, or is it grinding them out?
No, grinding is one way. It's more precise, but it's much more time consuming, and you're going to use a lot more consumables, the materials. We have a plasma cutter, which is more expensive initially, but then it's less expensive on the long run because of using less of consumables than you do with the blades, and also then just a regular torch. So if you're using a torch, it's much more slag involved and a lot less detail.
So you're using a plasma cutter, and you're saying it's not as fine of a detail, but when you're cutting the entire wall out, I guess is that less important, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Right.
We'll be using a grinder blade for doors and windows, so
Okay.
we have that flush straight line.
Precise cut.
Yeah, and Zach, you went through, what, 200 and how many?
Yeah, at least 200 grinder blades.
For his.
Yeah, and you know, it's something that you learn. And I was on a time schedule, so yeah, I just went with it.
And it's kind of dangerous because can't those break? Are those?
Yeah, if you get them in a bind, they'll shatter and it'll throw stuff at you.
Are you guys wearing? You got your guys wearing all sorts of safety protection, all that type of thing?
Yes.
Okay. And so for the interesting sort of, it's not a cantilever. What do we call the design of this house? Where there's sort of like back.
It is a cantilever, but we will have posts, so it's not a true cantilever. It won't be hanging by itself.
It's just an overhang, a 13-foot overhang.
Okay.
And then that 13-foot overhang on the second floor is compensated by the next container having the 13-foot overhang setting back to the original container itself.
I noticed you guys had guys there today that were doing all sorts of welding. It seems like you had to add a ton of extra supporting beams, holding them up, and you said you had to add I-beams and stuff.
Right, not extra. I mean, it was all calculated. Just it's a massive amount of welding involved. I mean, the amount of when you're building a house, I mean, all of it really is not so much realized because it's wood, and you're just cutting your wood and nailing it together. Here, it's the same thing, but there's a lot more steel involved, and because it's a metal place, a metal facility, it's just a lot more welding is involved.
And so do you have to put the beams on as they're set in place, or are you?
Most of the beams we set, so the beams that go in between the containers,
yes.
So we set container, then drop the beam in between.
Okay.
And we set another container and dropped another beam.
Okay.
Some of the exterior beams that hold up, like the overhang,
yes.
we put in later.
Okay.
Those I-beams, again, when we talk about preparation, Zach and I were able to place 9 containers in a single afternoon. I don't just mean an afternoon, a full day work. We started at 7 o'clock, had the first container arrive at 7:30, and we were placing the first one by 8 o'clock, and we were wrapping up, and the crane was pulling out of there by 3:30. So we were only able to do that, and that was with a full lunch as well, lunchtime, lunch break, but we were only able to do that with all the preparation work because with the I-beams that have to go into place, there's, again, a lot more preparation. It's not just dropping an I-beam. The I-beams are actually prepared with a top plate that gets welded to the I-beam, and then that top plate has to get pre-prepared with notches and cutouts so that when they get put into place, it's all going into place like a Lego system.
It's pretty cool. It's amazing.
And this design, I mean, this is more of an exotic design. This is more on the higher end designs for a container home, but we're still coming in at about $100 a square foot. So, I mean, traditional construction.
Cheap, just so we are clear.
Yeah, traditional construction, you pretty much start at 100 for base and go up from there. So he's at the higher end of design and still at the base of traditional costs.
And he's going to have a big home.
Yeah.
How many square feet?
2,880 square feet.
Yeah.
For 9 containers.
And so it will be, I think what was interesting, so you did not take out a loan for your home. The bank wouldn't allow it.
Right.
Probably because they couldn't put it in a certain category. However, Travis is doing a bank loan.
He is.
Okay, but there are requirements. Which
Yes.
Now, how many bedrooms and baths is yours?
Mine is 3-bed, 2.5 bath.
Okay, and his is going to be, and required to be a minimum of 3-bed, 2-bath.
Yes.
To do the loan.
And he's got 3-bed, 2.5 bath. He only wanted 1 bedroom, but the bank wouldn't allow that for resale value purposes. So on the 3rd floor, he put the minimum requirement of 2 tiny bedrooms and another bathroom.
Do you want to mention what bank he was able to work with, or do you think many banks would be?
Did he go? Did he have to go to a lot of banks?
He did go through a lot of banks,
okay.
And it wasn't just the difficulty of getting the loan because it's a container home, but then he also had to deal with redlining because of the area that he's constructing it in. So the banks were redlining him because of this is in Old North, and several banks told him, "You have the credit, we would loan to you, but can you build it somewhere else?" And they didn't want to build in Old North.
Realtors aren't allowed to do redlining. I guess maybe banks are.
I don't think they're supposed to, but...
Well, does it come out to, is it evaluation and being able to...
Comparables and resale values, I guess.
And resale, just in case there's a default on the loan. So I think that they have some guidelines.
And one thing that should be getting easier for container homes, not counting redlining, is that the more we build, the more comparables that we're building. Like his might have been easier because mine was already built, and they're very similar in size.
Okay.
And the next one should be even easier.
What'll be nice is now this will set a precedent for comps. So now that we have this, when this one's completed, we'll have a nice comp, and we'll be able to have a community. So people will be able to fly into the Dome or wherever they're visiting, or come to the convention center and have something to do at night and drive by. You have something at Crown Candy or La Mancha, and have a breakfast or Mancha, go visit the container home district. So I hope to have a container home district.
I'm sure
that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm sure that this is going to be a destination. His house.
It already kind of is.
Yeah.
It's across the street.
Right. I mean, I still have people driving by mine daily and stopping and taking pictures.
Really?
And almost weekly, somebody will knock on the door and ask questions.
They're like, get out of here.
Yeah. Right. And I'm sure it's going to be the
What questions
same.
are they asking at this point?
Well, some of them are dumb questions like, is this a container home I saw on TV? But most of them are really just concerned with, like, how did you do it? Like, how did you get approval? Can I do this? Can you do this for me?
You like those door knocks, don't you?
Right, yeah. I have to screen a lot of them because then they're thinking, hey, what can I build for $40,000?
Like a tiny home. So they're thinking in that category.
Yeah, well, they're
home.
thinking bigger than tiny home, and I have to break it to them that we're going to have to go tiny for that price.
Extra tiny.
Speaking of that, so each container, I guess, it depends on the size of the container, the condition. Is there like a general cost per raw container?
What's the question?
Is there kind of a general cost per, I guess it's a 40-foot, you guys use the 9-foot tall, which is the extra height,
The high
right?
cube, yes.
Yeah, is there kind of a general cost for that you can give to people?
For to purchase the container, or per square foot to complete it as a
To
home?
purchase the container.
To purchase the container, as we were talking, you're looking at about right now between $2,250 to $2,500 per container. But because of the price increase in steel and all, and the top 3 container companies merging, the container purchasing containers have changed a lot considerably in the past 3 to 6 months. So there's a lot more work involved with the containers. So although you may be getting a good price on them, you really have to consider and weigh, is it worth my time and effort involved preparing the container for the condition in which I want to have it look as a home, or let me just purchase a new container and just have it drop into place.
Okay.
So new containers are going to range anywhere from around, they start at $5,500. So the difference, and take into consideration, by the time you're looking at tax and delivery and all of that taken into consideration, that's not just $2,250 to $2,500 container. You're looking at approximately $3,500 per container.
Okay.
And you guys mentioned roughly around $100 a square foot for this particular property, but I guess every house would be different depending on what the people want and all that stuff, right?
Correct.
They should just reach out to you and not just use that as a set number.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Now, were there other container homes around the country did you call anyone up when you were doing yours and get any advice to try and learn?
No.
Or were you like, nope, I'm just going to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a professional artist, and so I just looked at this like a giant sculpture. And whereas normal construction, and I've renovated several homes in the past, normal construction is an additive process. You build it from the ground up, you're just adding things. This, you stack everything up in a day, then it becomes a subtractive process where you're removing things, then it becomes an additive process again. So it's basically, it's just a giant sculpture, and I just like figuring things out as I go.
Okay, so when you were doing yours, what was the single most difficult project? I mean, they're all challenging, I guess,
Yeah.
in their own right, but what was the single most challenging?
Physically, considering I didn't have a crew helping me, cutting and removing the walls was really, really physically difficult. The walls are really heavy. That's really heavy steel. So cutting those out and then carrying them out of the house in 6 foot by 4 foot, 8 foot by 4 foot sections, they're around 180 to 200 pounds each and sharp. So just
Is that how you stay in shape?
Yeah, well, that's how I stayed in shape that year.
I guess you cut the whole wall out and you're like, yay! And then you're like, oh my gosh, now I have to
how
cut
do I
this thing
get
up.
this? Yeah.
Oh, that'd be
yeah.
frustrating.
my first few cuts were just trying to figure out like what size is manageable, because I didn't really have an idea how much each section was going to weigh.
I wish you knew Joseph then, and he could have brought over his plasma cutter for you.
Yes.
So in these containers, they seem like they come with a wood floor.
They do. 1 inch thick hardwood plywood.
1 inch thick hardwood plywood, and is that part of the deal? Is you got to find a container that has good floors in good shape?
From what I've seen, all the ones I've seen have decent floors.
Joe's shaking his head, so we're not doing video. But
some of them need prep. I mean, some of them are, they can be split a little bit. I haven't seen any with bad holes that aren't workable. But if you have oil spill on there, you're going to have to sand that up before you can lay down anything on top.
And when we were doing the tour, can you tell everyone again what you said about they had some sort of bug spray on them or something?
Yeah, they're sealed with a pesticide.
The floors themselves, because they are wood.
Yes, it's the only part that bugs could eat. So they're sealed with a pesticide. So they say if you're going to use this for a home, either seal it in or get rid of them. So I chose to seal them in with a 2-part epoxy mixture.
From that perspective, would it be okay to sand them, or you'd be breathing in all this stuff?
Wear a respirator if you're going to sand those floors. And then even at that, still seal them up.
And anyone who's listening, please contact the professional, right? Do it at your own risk.
And like when Joe is shaking his head no, he's seen a lot of rough container floors. When you're ordering these containers, you can order them with an inspection.
So Joe was talking about levels. So there's different levels of conditions that you were actually.
It's changed over the past. Right, in the past 3 to 4 months. At a time that Zach had purchased his containers was an ideal time, and any time up to the past 3 to 4 months ago was really the time to buy. Now they're taking a lot out of circulation, so they're trying to eliminate a lot of those older ones. And it was very time consuming for me just to even pick out the 9 that we had picked out to get ones that were acceptable to be livable without so much damage. But yeah, there's a good amount of work that I have ahead with either heavy burn marks, gouges, and there's some areas that are going to have to be addressed.
I think that's part of the charm.
Yeah,
like all the dings and the dents I saw on the walls in there, on the containers.
It's what gives it the charm of that's the purpose of living in that type of eclectic look. It's nice. It's what you make out of it. And to me, that's part of the charm.
Yeah, really it's recycled, and we're going to show it off.
Did you have to use some sort of special kind of paint to make it like rust proof and?
So any rust spots we sealed with an epoxy, and then after that we use a DTM, direct to metal paint.
Okay.
Which I guess is good for the flexing, the expansion and contraction of metal.
Right. What we've done is what Zach had just said. We put the epoxy on the bare metal areas, a 2-part epoxy to prevent any future rust or anything, or actually from spreading. And then we put the whole containers with a primer, DTM primer, and then on top of the primer we put the final coat of the DTM final coat.
And how long from now do you think Travis will have to repaint?
I think this is like a 20-year paint at least.
Amazing. That's beautiful.
So the colors will go out of fashion before he needs to paint, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
As you guys are going through this with this particular guy, Travis, what has the process been about getting his input on the layout and the finishes versus what you already had from your experience? What's that kind of process going to look like for someone who wants to call you?
Well, working with Travis and Gina has actually been a pleasure. I really, of all the clients and customers and homeowners that I've ever worked with, they've been the most understanding and comfortable people to work with. And not because they're just easygoing, they're understandable. So they put a lot of logic behind it. They're very methodical. They know what they want. They know their decisions. And when I explain something to them with a reasonable understanding, they're very willing to understand the differences and very easy to work with.
Well, and I think it would be somewhat, as you say that, I think traditionally in our mindsets, when we build a house, we want all these things new. We want granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. But when I start thinking about outfitting a container home, I feel like there's zero expectation because it's not a type of home that kind of exists on the mainstream. So it's kind of like a wide open canvas of
Yes and no. My concern is that when you get somebody like that, you have to have an open mind to being eclectic and to what you want to have it to look at and the outcome. Remember, these containers are used so there's dents. So if somebody was so neurotic to saying, well, are you going to fix these decks? I want them perfect, and they're not going to be, because that's part of the system.
There's no dentless.
Right, that's part of the, unless you want to buy new.
Right.
So unless you want to go with that extra expense, so they're very understanding is what I should say.
So how will they be outfitting this one? Is this new materials? Is it like yours? Recycled? Is it a mix of the two?
They said
How are
not
they doing?
as eclectic as my house.
I like his choice of words. How
Right.
interesting. I don't know
Will
whether or
inside
not.
be drywalled and stuff, or
Yes, so we have to insulate all of the exterior walls, frame, and then drywall.
okay? Because so my dad built a new home 20 years ago or whatever, and I just remember him getting into the detail. The builder already had the plans. They built the same home 100 times already or whatever, and he's like, well, I don't want this outlet here. I want it like 12 inches to the right. And I'm kind of thinking, you probably don't want to work with my dad as a client on your container home. My dad's awesome, by the way. But do you kind of get into that layer of detail with somebody like this? Because this is the first container home with this design, right?
We have done some redesigns on the interior walls and like trying to figure out where the ductwork is going to go, where the electric and the plumbing is going to be run. So we had to move some walls a few inches. We had to go over some of those details, but I think in general, like we were talking earlier, they're open to the ideas of let's just make this functional, and from there.
I think we've had a lot of synergy between the three, well, I don't want to say the three of us, but the three groups, meaning, Travis and Gina and Zach and myself, with them being the final decision, Gina and Travis, and with the brainstorming of Zach, with the three of us putting our heads together, and whenever we come up against I don't want to say a dilemma, but, some decision making, we've had I feel, good synergy as to how we want the outcome to be.
And in the very beginning, I explained some of the things that they should be open to and expect, such as in certain areas you're going to have exposed electrical conduit or exposed ductwork.
I would think that would fit right in with the
Yeah, it's just it's a design
container home
aspect.
thing.
Yeah.
Yes and no, and here's why too, because you're only working with 9-foot ceilings. It's not like you're working with the loft downtown where you have 12 to 14-foot ceilings. So when you do put that open ductwork, now you're going to impede from a 9-foot ceiling, which is what you're looking for, because you're going for a high cube. Now it drops it down to 8 or maybe even less. So really, where are we going to put the ductwork to make it look the most aesthetically pleasing? And then the conduit, how do we do that? Because understand with this too, we're working with original, and I say original, we're working with the original floors and ceilings. There's no sheetrock on the ceiling, so this conduit now has to be exposed. So we want it to be the most pleasing to the eye as well, and you want to have it, in a manner that's comfortable in living with.
Okay.
So this is like you were talking about when we were there. This would be a great place to be if there was a tornado.
Yes.
It seems like a great place to be if there was a zombie attack.
He needs to decide who his friends are now as to who they're in.
I recently, my buddy got me all paranoid, and I'm into this whole end of days thing, and I've started buying food, and it's in my basement and all this stuff. Like a shipping container home seems like the perfect place to go.
Oh yeah, definitely. And as far as tornado proof, this entire home is a storm shelter.
Wow.
Everything being welded to everything else. You should just be worried about not being next to a window.
Because you're going to cut windows out, obviously, and so I kept thinking, oh man, you could just close those doors, but then he'll still have windows, and you're probably not going to have, maybe like in the future, do you think when you cut the window out, you would keep that metal and make it so you could
so it's like shutters?
Is that just
cool.
ridiculous that it's totally unnecessary?
I think it would just be unnecessary. If you ever reach that conclusion, I guess you could just nail some plywood to the interior and cover them up.
I think he's better pack the car and move.
Yeah, right.
But to answer your question, it's really different than what you're thinking, because what you're saying is can you use the doors as shutters? Not in actuality, because the windows are not going to be on the sides of the doors. The windows go on the back end of the containers where there's no doors.
Okay.
The only area where that would be is because then at that point you have to build the interior frame inside the door frame.
Uh-huh.
So we are doing that only at the front door level though. Every other window will be on an exterior frame of the container. Nothing No windows will be cut out on any of the door areas.
Okay, that makes sense. Can I ask about the roof, though? Because is it a true flat roof? Because it's a container, so it's flat. Like, even on flat roofs here in the city, we have pitch, some pitch.
You still have to have a pitch, and we're going to go with the minimum 1/8 drop for every 12 inch.
So do you have to build up?
Quarter inch, sorry.
Quarter-inch
mine
drop
was 1/8
from front
inch.
to back.
No, every 12 inches will have a
every
quarter-inch drop.
12 inches has a quarter-inch drop is the minimum standard. And so, is there any roofing materials, or how are you doing the roof?
So
because
the
it's
roof
starting
will-
out flat right now.
Yeah, and that's just that's our base. The roof of the containers, that's our base roof. On top of that, we'll build up foam insulation panels.
Okay.
And that will also be the structure of the roof itself as well.
Okay.
So that's about 10 inches total from front to back, right?
We're going to go side to side.
Correct.
Oh, side to side.
Correct.
So you're saying on the roof you're going to build some little thing.
Build it up.
Yeah, it'll be up on one side and slant towards the west side, the yard side.
Correct.
What'll that be made out of?
That'll be the foam board, as he's explained.
Foam board.
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be over a half a foot of foam board sloping down.
So what, we have to get our R30, is it?
Correct.
For the roof?
Because you had to add insulation up there anyway, so it's like an insulated foam board that'll also
Correct.
double as the roof?
Yep.
Correct.
Crazy, okay.
And then it'll be a flat TPO roof, which is the
Rubber.
The standard of, what you
Right
say
on top
here.
of that.
Yes.
Awesome, okay. So as you guys have learned from this one, do you have a next big project booked? Or in your mind, you have some new, cool, awesome idea that you're going to do for the next one?
Or what is the biggest change, or what are you learning? You learned from yours, you're learning from this. What are you going to take for the next?
Efficiency is the idea for the next project. I've like the list of people who have contacted me. I'll dive into that list and see what's best for the next project. But right now, I'm working on designs for a woman in Chicago, and hers will be 4 containers, 2 stories, with a rooftop terrace.
Love it. Why not?
Yeah.
What's nice also, with some of the designs, Zach has taken blocks, and we've sat down at his studio and just went through some different creative ideas. And you can take containers and you can put them apart. They don't always have to be adjacent. So if you set containers apart and just put a truss system from one to the other, you can start with 2 containers and yet have a structure that's maybe 1,000 square feet by using the space in between as more ground footage or more area footage that you're looking to have between them.
Yeah. I thought about
Interior
kind of like a V-shaped
Right.
one with something on top of that. There's all sorts of different. So you've made like blocks that are sort of like a scale model size of
Yeah,
containers?
I've so out of a 2x8 board, I just measured how that gives me the proportional width of the floor of a 40-foot container. Then I just measured where I need to make my cuts, and I cut like hundreds of these blocks so I can just build models.
That's
They kind of
awesome.
look like giant Jenga.
Yeah, you've seen like the 2x4 Jengas at bars now. It's kind of like that.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
awesome. Okay. Well, anything else we want to say before we wrap it up?
No. So anything?
No.
Let's give your contact information one more time, if you don't mind.
My email is Zachary.smithey@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook or Instagram at Zack.smithey, and that's ZACK, Smith with an EY at the end, Smithy.
Mine is jbandalos at Hotmail. J is in Juliet, B Bravo, ANDALOS.
We really appreciate you guys' time today. I know you got to get back to the house. There's a lot of work going on, and maybe we'll want to follow up with you again. And you said it'll be done in
We're looking at 4 months.
4 months.
So if you'd like to do another one in 2 months or so,
Beautiful.
do a walkthrough of the interior.
Yeah, we'd
So
love to do
when's
that.
his move-in date?
We're shooting
February?
for 4 months from now. Well,
Around middle of January to the end of January. A lot of it's going to depend on weather at that time too. I mean, we're trying to get as much as we can before the weather sets in. So we've had a lot of the delays now. Although we broke ground in July, a lot of the issues that we had were pre-existing foundation issues and a lot of weather issues because of all the rain that we had this summer.
Nice. Wow.
Perfect. Well, thanks
we want to be
everyone for
there for the
listening.
open house.
They're right there.
Yeah, we want to. Hopefully they'll have
Just
an open house. We'll just invite ourselves. We'll knock on the door like we have an open house. He is.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks again for listening, and thank you guys very much for letting us interview for our podcast. And take care.
Thank you.